Welcome and thank you for joining us tonight on this beautiful Wednesday, an opportunity to gather around the scriptures. 469-256-8877 is the number we put up if you have questions or a prayer request, or if you'd like to receive one of our study edition Bibles, we'd be happy to send one of these to you. Just send us your contact information. Some of my favorite Bible verses are the "but God" Bible verses, 31 different times where there's someone that's going through a difficult situation, and then it says, "But God heard my prayer, but God protected me from harm, but God remembered Noah, but God remembered Samson." It tells us these scenes in the scriptures where people are struggling. Maybe they have failures in their lives, they've sinned, there's difficulties and challenges, but God shows up. God steps into the scene. I've called our lesson today, "But God," as we look at Genesis chapter 26, verse 34 through 27, verse 29, as we continue our series, Journeys with Jacob, from grasping to leaning. When we come to the life of Jacob, we find a man who is stumbling in their faith, who is tripping up in life, plenty of failures, plenty of mistakes, and yet behind the scenes we see God showing up. But God, who shows up and still is able to work through all of the faults and all of the failures. With all of his mistakes, it's surprising that the scriptures never say anything negative about Jacob. In fact, it says, "Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated," speaking of God. Even his father, Isaac is listed in Hebrews chapter 11, the faith chapter, 5 different times, being commended for his faith. Jacob also is mentioned 3 times in Hebrews 11, being commended for his faith. But when we come across Isaac and Jacob here in Genesis chapter 26 and 27, we find anything but faith. We find a family that is at their absolute worst. We find mistake upon mistake, failure upon failure. There are no heroes in this story today. No one looks good. There's 4 characters: Isaac, Rebekah, the mother, Jacob, and Esau, the brothers. All 4 are portrayed negatively in what we look at today. It's interesting, all 4 never appear together at the same time. They are scattered, they are fragmented. Jacob and Esau have now grown so far apart, they're never seen together. Isaac and Rebekah are never seen together. And at the center of this story is a blessing which drives the conduct and behavior of all the characters here. But the way they behave is so ungodly, so unspiritual. I want us to notice, first of all, disobedience. Looking at Genesis 26 and beginning at verse 34. When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beri the Hittite, and also Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. That sentence there, "they were a source of grief," tells us everything about what's going on in the life of Esau. God has now appeared and spoken to Isaac in Genesis 26. He's promised him that he will fulfill his promises through Isaac and his children. And he tells Isaac, "I will be with you." And Isaac, who had been commended for his faith earlier, is now showing fear in this chapter. In fact, he meets Abimelech, king of the Philistines. He's afraid that some of the men in that land will take his wife, and so he lies and says, this is my sister. Same thing that Abraham did. He does that out of fear, but Abimelech finds out pretty soon that Isaac, Rebekah's actually his wife, because he sees them holding hands together, embracing together, loving with each other, and he therefore sees that this is your wife. Why would you say that to me? And Isaac explains that it was out of fear for his life and fear for his wife's life. He's now acted in fear. But on top of that, he has a favorite son who's Esau. He's not showing faith. He's out of his favoritism, wanting to make sure that his oldest son is going to get the blessing. And he just can't bear the fact that God has said that it's going to be Jacob that carries the blessing. And so he now wants to do this in his own power. And when you read the text, it's very clear that Isaac knows that Jacob is the one who's to receive the blessing. He is the younger. The older will serve the younger, God had promised. And now, to spite his parents, Esau has married two pagan Canaanite women, showing him how unworthy he is, how incapable he is to carry on this promise. In fact, the entire story is bookended by Esau's marriages. You'll notice that from the beginning to end, it highlights the marriages of Esau. In chapter 26, 34, Esau's marriages grieve his parents, and then Isaac intends to bless Esau, and then Rebekah's plan to help Jacob deceive, and then Isaac blesses Jacob, and then Rebekah's plan to help Jacob flee, and Isaac intends to bless Jacob, and then it's bookended again by Esau's marriages, which grieve his parents. Knowing all that Abraham went through to get the appropriate wife for Isaac, in spite of all that, he married the two people that he should not have married. He is utterly unconcerned about God's blessings. He is deliberately choosing to do something that would be against the will of God and certainly without the counsel of his parents. It continues on in Genesis 27 and verse 1. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die." Now a significant amount of time has passed, and they've all grown up. They're grown adults now. I won't go through the math, but because we know the ages of Isaac and how old Esau was when he was married and how old Jacob was when Joseph was 39, we can back into the approximate age. We can be fairly certain that Jacob and Esau are about 75 years old now, and Isaac is 135 years old. He felt for some reason that he was about to pass, although he would live 35 more years from this moment and die. Isaac would at the age of 180. It's interesting, he calls Esau his older son, not his firstborn. And this reveals to us something. It's interesting because it reveals to us that in Isaac's mind, this is what we would call a slip of the tongue. He reveals what he knows to be true, and he reveals what he's concealing. And that is that even though his older son, his firstborn son, is not worthy to receive the blessing, he's going to give it to him anyway. He's bent on doing that. This also reveals that everything that's taken place here between Isaac and Esau is done in complete secrecy. He wants to get this done and get it done quickly. He doesn't want to involve Rebekah in this because he knows that she will be against this and may interfere with it. And so now we come across the third conflict between Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau in the womb, Jacob and Esau dealing with his birthright over the stew, and now the blessing from their father. This is a portrait of a dysfunctional family in every way. You could go to a bookstore and find all kinds of titles: Secrets of a Dysfunctional Family, Healing from a Dysfunctional Marriage, Overcoming your Dysfunctional Childhood. The list would go on and on. This family has all the symptoms. They're estranged from each other. There's anger. There's a lack of trust and family communication that just doesn't exist. There's deception on all parties. And there's unhealthy secrecy and a refusal to face and believe the truth. The book of Genesis, all the Bible's filled with stories of dysfunction, stories of broken families, people who make mistakes. But in spite of all that, but God is able to bring about and accomplish his will. And this should give us great encouragement because we all fail. We all can make mistakes, and yet God is able. This actually is going to continue in dysfunction because it all started with Abraham, Sarah, Hagar, and Ishmael. That dysfunction carried over into the life of Isaac and Rebekah, played out here in Jacob and Esau, and it will continue on in the family, in the life of Jacob and his children. So Isaac in his old age, frail and unable to see, wants to fulfill his fondest dream, and that is to pass on the cherished blessing to his favorite son, his firstborn, his older son, Esau. He sends him out to prepare what he calls a tasty meal of the food he likes, and his intentions are clear. In doing this, he is making it clear that he is bound and determined to give that blessing to Esau. By doing this, he is clearly trying to overturn what God has said. He's revealing that he's ruled completely by his desires and what he wants. He's ignoring the fact that Esau is spiritually unqualified for this, and he conspires in secret to bring this all about, hiding all the plans. And the secrecy reveals that he was ashamed to actually talk to Rebekah about this because he knew that she would not approve. None of this matters to Isaac. He wants his favorite son to get the blessing. And this is absolute disobedience. But notice, second of all, there's also deception. Genesis 27 and verse 5, we continue. Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "Look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, 'Bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats so I can prepare some tasty food for your father just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat so that he may give you his blessing before he dies.'" In all of Isaac's secrecy, he was completely unaware that Rebekah was listening in to the conversation. 2 times, Rebekah tells Jacob to look, listen, and obey. This Hebrew word is a firm word, not just to listen, but to go and do and obey. She thinks Jacob perhaps will resist her plan, and so she invokes her right as a mother to tell her son what to do. Go and do just as I say. Rebekah also knows what kind of food Isaac likes, and she knows how to prepare a tasty dish just for him. This tells us that she has been planning this for some time, planning a way to bring this about. Rebekah repeats what Isaac said to Jacob almost word for word, except she adds, "with the Lord's approval." She's trying to persuade Jacob. She's trying to persuade him by making it clear that making it appear that this is God's plan, when this is not God's plan or way to do this. It's God's will that Jacob receive the blessing and birthright, but it's not God's way that he wanted to bring this about. Continuing in verse 11, Genesis 27, it says, Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing." His mother said to him, "My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me." So he went and got them and brought them to his mother. She prepared some tasty food just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son, Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goatskins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread that she had made. Deception, deception, and more deception. She has thought everything through. Tasty food is mentioned 3 different times. She knows what her husband likes when it comes to food. Goat skins, even the smell and the aroma of Esau, she has thought about everything. When Jacob hears this amazing plan, he seems to be fine with everything except for one reservation. What if I get caught? Just do what I say, she says. I'll bear the blame. Interesting, later on, when it comes time for Rebekah to take the blame, she blames Jacob for what he did to his brother. Rebekah is in charge of the family. In fact, she is a strong woman. And throughout the life of Jacob, from Rebekah to his wives, he will always be heavily influenced by his wives, either for good or for bad. Rebekah is strong, she's resourceful, she's decisive, she's cunning. She shows herself here to be deceiving. She is driving all of this. All these events happen because of Rebekah. Who listened in? Rebekah. Who thought of the deception plan? Rebekah. Who said, go get the food? Rebekah did. Who said, put on the goat skin? Rebekah. Who said, let the blame fall on me? It was Rebekah. And who said, put on Esau's clothing? Rebekah did. She literally places the food in Jacob's hand. She doesn't wait for him to get it. She puts it in his hand and says, obey my voice and go. At every point, she is in charge. She has an answer for every question and a solution for every objection that Jacob brings up. The question we ask is, why did Jacob do it? Was he under pressure from his mother? Did he want the blessing so badly that he was willing to do whatever he needed? Did he believe that the ends justified the means? I believe that he had convinced himself, because of what God told Rebekah before Jacob and Esau were born, the promise would be given to him, that he justified his every behavior, and now he's going to try to help God out and bring this on. I'm going to continue reading at verse 18, Genesis 27. It says in verse 18, he went to his father and said, my father. Yes, my son. He answered, who is it? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing. Isaac asked his son, how did you find it so quickly, my son? The Lord your God gave me success, he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not. Jacob went close to his father, Isaac, who touched him and said, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. Are you really my son Esau? He asked. I am, he replied. Then he said, my son, bring me some of your game to eat, so that I may give you my blessing. Jacob brought it to him, and he ate, and he brought some wine, and he drank. And then his father Isaac said to him, come here, my son, and kiss me. And just like that, the deed is done. Isaac suspects something all along. After all, he was trying to fool Rebekah and Jacob by having Esau have the blessing. He suspects something already. His mind is telling him this is not Esau. It sounds like Jacob how could you have captured the wild game so fast? It doesn't sound anything like Esau, but just like that, Jacob deceives his father. It's a deliberate deception. I am Esau, your firstborn. There's blasphemy. The Lord your God gave me success. There's repeated deception. Are you really my son? I am, he answered. There's a dishonest intimacy here when he got up to kiss his father. And there's misleading details from the hair that he places on his arms and neck to even the smell of the clothes. It's interesting that Isaac, with the sense that something's not right, has 5 different tests to validate. He wants Jacob to come close. He listens to the voice. He feels his arms, his neck. He asked him to verify again if this was Esau, and he smelled his clothes. And though things didn't seem quite right, it was the smell of Esau that he smelled coming from the clothing that Jacob was wearing that was the compelling factor. Rebekah had truly thought of everything. Looking at verse 27 of chapter 27 of Genesis, so he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." The blessing here that Isaac gives to Jacob is really three things. There's personal prosperity in the field, in his home, and his family. There's a preeminence that he's in this blessing that's calling for nations to bow down to Jacob and his descendants, and for the older to indeed serve the younger. And there is a protection from God that those who curse him would be cursed. On the one hand, Jacob is deceiving his father Isaac, but on the other hand, Isaac is deceiving Jacob because he believes this is really Esau. Both intended to deceive the other, only Jacob succeeds. The most amazing thing to consider when we look at all of these acts of deception, all of this secrecy, trickery, failures, is that God still was sovereign. God still worked through that family to bring about the promise of the Messiah one day. It was God's will that Jacob received the blessing. This just wasn't God's way. And I believe if Jacob would have waited on the Lord, depended upon God, said, "God, I don't know how you're going to bring this about, but I am not going to resort to deception in order to accomplish this. I'm going to depend and wait upon you." It's as far as I want to go in the text today, and we'll pick up again another time next week with the remainder of this story. But I want to make a couple of practical applications. A man was visiting Africa years ago, and he saw children playing a game of marbles, except they were playing marbles not with marbles, they were playing marbles with diamonds. They had no idea the value of what they were playing games with. And we often do the same thing with God. We tend to treat like rubbish the things that God says are of great value. This text should challenge us about the danger of playing games with God, of handling heavenly things in an earthly, ugly, human way. And in the end, we find that God is merciful in spite of all the failures of Isaac, Rebekah, Esau, and Jacob. And there are so many failures in this story. This is a lesson on the importance of waiting on the Lord to accomplish His will in His own way, in His own time. We do in faith as much as we can do in a righteous manner, and then we leave the rest up to the Lord to bring it about. This is a warning of taking matters into our own hands. And the temptation that Jesus faced was to use His own power to bring about what God wanted to accomplish. One time Jesus, when He was tempted with this, said, "Get behind me, Satan. You don't have in mind the things of God, but the things of men." And that's what is happening here, is Satan's attempt to bring about God's will in his way and destroy what God's plan is and was. We can be sure of this, that those who wait on the Lord, even though it's difficult and requires patience, will in the end not be disappointed. And those who impatiently try to force God's hand may get what they wanted, but in the process lose everything of value. You see, if God wanted Jacob to have the blessing and birthright, there is absolutely no way that Esau can keep it. God is able to make a way. There's no way. If God wanted Jacob to have it, there's no way it was going to end up in Esau's hand. God is able to intervene. God didn't need Jacob's help. He didn't need Rebekah's help. What he needed from them was faith to trust that he would bring this about. And when we interfere, when we try to help God, especially in an ungodly, unrighteous way, we just mess things up. God's faithfulness, God is faithful to his promises in spite of us. This phrase, "but God," should give us hope. Even when we can't seem to find a way through, God is able to make a way through. This phrase, "but God," tells us that in spite of our failures, but God is able to bring it about. Our failures do not get the last word. The hardest prayer that any one of us will ever pray is to say the words, "Thy will be done." Thy will be done. I depend upon you to do it in your way. We need to wait on the Lord. Thy will be done. If it takes longer than I think, thy will be done. If I don't understand how you're operating and working this out, in faith I say, thy will be done. When my heart is filled with fear, thy will be done. And when I'm tempted to doubt your plan, thy will be done. When I think that I know better than you, Lord, thy will be done. Lord, whatever it costs, whatever it takes, thy will be done. Let's pray. Father, forgive us for the times that we try to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, but we do it in ungodly and unrighteous ways. Help us to have faith, to trust in your plan, to not go ahead, to not fall behind, to do as much as we can righteously in faith, but then to depend upon you and to say, your will be done. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
I care not today what the morrow may bring, if shadow or sunshine or rain. The Lord I know ruleth o'er everything, and all of my worry is vain.
Living by faith,
Yes, living by faith,
in Jesus above,
in Jesus above,
trusting
confiding in his great love, yes, in his great love. From all harm safe in his sheltering arm, his sheltering arm.
I'm living by faith,
I'm living by faith and feel no alarm, Though tempests may blow and the storm clouds arise, obscuring the brightness of light, I'm never alarmed at the overcast skies. The Master looks on at the strife.
living by faith,
Yes, living by faith,
in Jesus above,
in Jesus above,
trusting
confiding in his great love, yes, in his great love. From all harm safe in his sheltering arm, his sheltering arm.
I'm living by faith,
I'm living by faith and feel no alarm, I know that he safely will carry me through, no matter what evils betide. Why should I then care though the tempest may blow, if Jesus walks close to my side?
living by faith,
Yes, living by faith,
in Jesus above,
in Jesus above,
trusting
confiding in his great love, yes, in his great love. From all harm safe in his sheltering arm, his sheltering arm.
I'm living by faith,
I'm living by faith and feel no